The Yellow Dress is the second story in the series Be Amazed. The Yellow Dress. Maria was dreaming the same dream again. She was with her group of friends on the railway platform as she waved goodbye to Harry with intense mixed feelings. He stood on the door of the train, waving goodbye to all of them. Maria suppressed the tears welling up in her eyes. Her heart hurt so badly. She felt like bawling loudly. She could feel Celia and John watching her covertly. Tears were the last thing that Maria would have allowed them to see. She had to be brave and not allow anyone see how immensely sad she was to see Harry leave. Harry was joining the army, going towards a better life. She had to be glad for him, hoping that he would finally be able to be independent financially. The shrill whistle of the passing train woke her up in a jolt. She looked around her and realized that she was seated under the tree in her garden. She had obviously dozed off in the shade of the big parijat tree. The air was filled with the perfume of the parijat flowers. She picked up some flowers from her lap and dusted away some flowers which had fallen on her dress. All around her, the flowers lay like a thick white blanket. Maria again picked up a handful of the flowers from the ground and smelled them. These flowers always made her think of Harry. They had listened to music, learned to paint, and generally whiled away any little time that Harry could spare together under the same parijat tree. Maria could see the train slowly pull out of the railway station in the distance. The only feeling that trains could create are nostalgia, she thought sadly. She gathered the easel with the attached canvas and her brushes with the paints. She had to carry the articles inside since there could be rainfall that evening. I can set up the easel tomorrow morning to complete the painting, Maria thought to herself. Maria's mother came to the door of the house and watched her daughter stretch and yawn as she woke up from her light slumber. Maria was such a pretty picture at the time. There were flowers strewn all around her as she sat with an upturned book on her lap. She watched her daughter pick up some flowers and smell them. The feeling of sadness was etched on her face. There was no doubt in the mother's mind about what her daughter was sighing about. Come for tea, Maria, her mother said. She watched Maria with the painting easel and articles as she walked towards the cottage that was their home. Sad and lonely, my poor child. Her life has stood still. God help her, her mother thought. As they munched on the home baked ginger biscuits with their tea, her mother said, These ginger biscuits are so good as usual, child. You could make a business out of selling these, I think. Oh, Mum, these are for friends and family. Mr. D'Souza called from Panaji. Another painting of mine has been sold from his gallery. We should be getting the money soon. In fact, it is much greater than before. He wants me to send him some more paintings as soon as I can. There are some unfinished works that I intend to finish as quickly as I can. Oh, Mum, I dreamt of Harry again. Maria's eyes glistened with tears. I wish there had been Some news of him at least. It is difficult to expect any news now, after 12 years, child, her mother said. Aunt Maria called a little voice at the door. Come in, Michelle, darling. Maria and her mother called the child who was standing at the door. Wearing a little red frock and with pigtails, little Michelle walked into their kitchen and reached the dining table. Oh, little Miss Red Riding Hood is here, Maria exclaimed with a smile. The child was a ray of sunshine in their otherwise lonely lives. The child dimpled and said, Grandpa said the same thing, Aunt Maria. Have some biscuits here, Maria offered. Michelle settled down on the chair offered and took a bite of the ginger biscuit. It's good, Aunt Maria. May I take some for Grandpa? Of course, Michelle. Let me pack some for you. Grandpa said that Mama and Papa have become stars in the sky. Will you come and watch the stars with me tonight, Aunt Maria? We will both be there and watch the stars with you tonight. Grandpa should have come for tea. Where is he? He has been cleaning the attic since morning. He must be tired. He said that there was so much to clean up there. There are a lot of things that Papa has been storing in the attic. These biscuits will cheer him up, said Michelle. Taking the packet of biscuits, little Michelle skipped happily out of the door. Once in the yard, she walked through the little gate in the wall that separated their houses from each other. Maria watched the child from the doorway. She suddenly remembered how she had first seen Harry in the neighbor's house at the gate in the wall. Maria must have been in grade 3 when she had seen Harry for the first time. He had smiled at her, and Maria thought that it was the sweetest smile she had ever seen. She had walked to the gate to speak to him. Who are you, and what are you doing in John's house? Hello, my name is Harry. My mother is Uncle William's sister. John is my cousin, Harry had said. William was John's father. William, his wife Elizabeth, and John, their son, lived in the house next door. At this point, Maria had noticed that Harry was wearing ill-fitting clothes. They looked as if they were hand-me-down clothes from John. There was a sad look in Harry's eyes, but there had been a twinkle when he saw Maria. Maria's mother had told her later that Harry's mother was John's father's sister. She had been widowed at a very young age. Though her husband had left her with some land, she had taken his loss very badly and had lost her health after her husband's death. She could not tend to the farming properly, which left her in pretty dire straits. She had passed away due to the continuous strain on her health and resources. Uncle William had given the farm on lease and brought Harry to live with him and his family. William's wife Elizabeth was a kind lady and had welcomed the orphaned Harry warmly into their home. But John was not happy at all. He was an only son and did not like the attention that his parents paid to Harry. According to John, Harry was not welcome in his house and further, not at all welcome to talk to his neighbor Maria. Maria belonged to him and him only. They had played together as children and he was not going to share her with anybody, least of all with his bedraggled orphaned cousin. John had decided that he was in love with the little Maria. He was going to wait for them to grow up and then he would marry her. They would live in his parents' house and build a family. But John had not reckoned for Maria's nature. She was always attracted to the lesser fortunate in the world. No beggar went from Maria's house without food or alms. She was kinder to the poor strangers than she was to her friends, and this is what happened between the friends. Maria had taken a great liking to Harry. She wanted to cheer him up, though he was 4 years older to her. John, Maria, Harry, and another neighbor, Celia, walked together to school every morning and evening. Celia and John teamed up and never failed to make fun of Harry's misfortune almost every day in the typical fashion of cruelty that small children are capable of. But little Maria stood up for Harry. She became so ferociously angry when they made fun of him that they had to stop teasing him in front of her. Further, John could not or did not want to antagonize Maria. After all, in his mind, she was his little sweetheart. Harry and John were classmates. When Harry performed better than John, it made John angry. Though his parents did not do any comparisons between him and Harry, even their encouraging Harry made John angry with Harry. Harry had to put up with all the taunts that John and his friends made. He went about his work in a quiet, dignified manner. He did a lot of help around the house and told Maria that he was used to doing these things for his mother. But Maria's mother told her that she thought that Harry was doing more than his share of the work around the house in gratitude to his uncle and aunt for his upkeep. Maria had a friend and mentor in Harry. Thanks to his teaching, she excelled in studies. Maria had loved to paint. With her mother's and Harry's encouragement, she had started to paint very skillfully. The lovely personality that was inherently hers was somehow propagated in her soft and dreamy Goan paintings. Her paintings were currently selling very well. Both of them, Harry and Maria, loved music and listened to all their songs together. One of their favorite songs was that of the former jailbird writing to his wife upon completing his jail term. He would be released from prison and would take a bus that would arrive in his village. The bus would then be traveling further on to other neighboring villages. He was worried that he would not be welcome in his home because he was returning from jail, that he had been a prisoner. His wife and children would perhaps be afraid of the stigma that his jail sentence carried. They would have to live with this stigma among the other people in their village. Therefore, he had asked his wife in his letter to tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree which stood at the edge of his village near the first bus stand. The yellow ribbon would signify that he was welcome back in his home. When the bus would arrive in his village, if he saw a yellow ribbon around the tree, he would get off the bus and come home. If there was no ribbon, he would understand. He would not get off the bus at all and continue his journey, forgetting his family since they did not want him back. In a story told on the Reader's Digest, Harry and Maria had read that when the convict had arrived in his village, the oak tree had been blowing in the breeze with not one but hundreds of yellow ribbons. He had got off the bus to finally go back to his loving family and home. Go tie a yellow ribbon round the old oak tree if you still want me. If I don't see a ribbon round the old oak tree, I don't get off the bus. Maria and Harry had imagined the banyan tree in the little station in front of their houses. How would how it would contain not one but a lot of yellow ribbons, since not only the wife but the children would also want the father back home. The years passed by as the boys completed their pre university studies. They had just crossed 18 years of age. Harry had applied to join the army, and it was time for him to leave their village. Maria now knew for certain that she loved Harry with all her heart. Her mother, well informed about her daughter's feelings, watched the situation her young daughter was in with trepidation. Harry often had told Maria that he was a nobody and he had to become a somebody before. He never said before what. On the Christmas day, just before Harry had to leave, Maria had worn a bright yellow dress. Her mother had said that she looked like a ray of sunshine in her dress. When she arrived at the venue where she had to meet her friends, John had walked up to her in the yard of the building, smiling at Maria. But Maria had eyes only for Harry and had wanted to see his reaction. She had ignored John, not even noticing him, and walked to where Harry stood. She had observed that Harry's eyes had glimmered when he saw her. He had immediately pulled on a mask as though the glimmer had never been there. But for Maria, the glimmer was enough. Harry's eyes had already conveyed his feelings for her. Maria had been blissfully happy thereafter. Harry had left, enlisted in the army, and was being posted in North India. Harry wrote regularly to his uncle and aunt. He was doing well, had got a promotion, was posted on the Indo-China border. The years passed and John had gotten a job in the local post office. He had made several attempts to woo Maria. He bravely even sent a proposal of marriage to Maria through his parents. Maria's mother had known of Maria's decision even before she consulted her daughter. Maria refused his proposal of marriage, saying that she intended to continue her studies. Harry's letters had suddenly stopped. There was news of an avalanche in the very area that he was posted in. Attempts were made by William and his wife Elizabeth to contact him, but there was absolutely no news about Harry, either from the army or from him. Aunt Elizabeth had, in the meantime, passed away of illness. Meanwhile, John and Celia had married. Michelle was born to them after a few years of marriage. John and Celia recently had decided to attend a friend's marriage in Mumbai. Mumbai had flash floods due to heavy rains. John and Celia had never returned. Their bodies, washed away into the sea, were never found. Little Michelle had become her grandfather's responsibility. This is the 13th year since I stood in the railway station waving goodbye to Harry, Maria thought. She opened her dress closet and picked out the yellow dress. Since she was quite slim, the dress still fitted beautifully. Maria closed her eyes and imagined that she would definitely wear this same dress if ever Harry came back. She imagined how Harry would look all grown up, responsible, and capable of what he had left unsaid. She hung the dress back in its place and looked at it sadly. It was December and time for yet another Christmas. Another empty Christmas without Harry, Maria thought. Though she was in her room, Maria suddenly realized that there was a commotion going on in the living room of their house. Uncle William's voice sounded high pitched and angry. Maria's mother was loud and sounded confused. Michelle danced about and made noises that no one could understand. When Maria came out of her bedroom into the living room, there was a sudden silence. Only Michelle was talking. Uncle William had a bunch of letters in his hands and was waving them at Maria. Letters from Harry, my dear. They all immediately felt the need to suddenly sit down. I found them in the attic, said William. Looks as if John had hidden them there. I cannot imagine why and how sorry I am about this. At least he did not destroy them. Otherwise, we would never have known. They needed to recover from the shock of the discovery before even thinking of the next thing to do. There were 8 letters. 6 of them, the older ones, were addressed to William. There were 2 letters addressed to John, and one was addressed to Maria. They huddled together to open the letters to William. Harry had described his successes in the army and how he would finally be able to look after his uncle and aunt, who had so kindly taken care of him all the young years of his life. The letter to John lay unopened. With great anxiety, William slowly opened the earlier letter to John. Harry had said that he was very sad to hear that his uncle and aunt had passed away and had given his heartfelt condolences to John. This meant that John had probably told Harry an ugly untruth about the passing away of both his parents, perhaps even when his mother too had been alive. Harry had said in his letter that he was sad that he was unable to have met them before their demise. He also said that he understood John's feelings about not seeing him ever again and not to visit the village at all. All the 3 of them sat quietly for some time, trying to digest the news that John had lied about his parents' demise. The letter to Maria was dated next, and it had already been opened. Harry had written to Maria, talking about how he had waited all his young life to be able to tell Maria about his feelings for her. He was now earning well enough to be able to take care of her. He had sufficient savings also, so that he could buy property in her own village if she so preferred. He also said that he hoped that if Maria was interested, he now had the capability to propose marriage to her. He would retire voluntarily from the army in a few months. He could not wait to see her in the yellow dress that he remembered. His farm was freed, back in his hands, and they could build a life in his village or in her village as she liked. The surprise was too much to take for Maria. The letter to her was 8 years old. Maria's mother hugged her daughter and they both sobbed quietly. The letter to John was dated as the last letter. Harry had congratulated John on his marriage to Maria. He wished them well with all his heart. This was another ugly untruth from John. Apparently, Harry had been dissuaded from ever trying to contact any of them since Maria would have been married to John. This explained the silence from Harry. The army had not replied because Harry was well and healthy. No adverse situation had been reported about him except that he had retired with due diligence from active service. Harry had not contacted any of them, thinking that it would be better to keep his distance from them, given that with John and Maria's marriage, it would not have been appropriate for him to be in their midst anymore. Such behavior was expected from any decent human being, and decency was one characteristic that Harry had never lacked. Uncle William slowly left the place. Neither Maria nor her mother noticed his departure. The letters lay strewn on the table. Maria held her letter in her hand and sobbed softly, uncontrollably. Her mother held her daughter and said nothing. Both of them sat there for a very long time. The news was too difficult to digest. By the time they realized that Uncle William had left the place, darkness had fallen all around them. Maria and her mother finally walked over to William's house next door. The door was locked, and neither William nor Michelle were to be found. Calls made to William's phone went unanswered. Next morning, there was a knock on the door. Maria opened the door and Uncle William stood there. "Good morning, Maria, my child," he said. "My son has wronged you so badly. It is my responsibility to correct at least some part of it. God bless you, dear." With these words, Uncle William stood aside, and standing there, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, was Harry. Maria quietly slid into his arms and was held tightly. Sobbing quietly, they stood there for some time. Finally, Harry broke the silence. "I will never let you go, Maria. Neither will I go away ever again." Christmas had arrived in full swing for all of them. Harry and Maria were married the day after Christmas. A few days later, Maria sat at the dining table which they had placed outside the front door of their cottage for dinner. Maria looked at little Michelle munching at cake, her grandfather seated at the table sipping tea, her dear mother beaming at the family, and finally at Harry, who looked at her with all the love his eyes could hold. Finally, Maria felt complete. Her paradise was well within her reach, cluttered with the loving people around the table. Life could throw her lemons, but with these people around her, she would catch the lemons and perhaps make lemonade. Maria smiled.